Well, Washington could be violating international law if it acts in Syria, something pointed out by Russia's foreign ministry. RT's Medina Korchenova joins me live now for more on the reaction to a possible US attack. Medina, what are the concerns from the Kremlin?
Well, Russia's foreign ministry says that launching airstrikes on the territory of Syria without any official approval coming from Damascus and with no UN decision will be regarded as an act of aggression against this country and will also be seen as a major violation of the international law. Now, Russia has warned that these strikes would also amount to a colossal escalation of the conflict in the Middle East. And the ministry also adds that there are once again fears that these strikes will not only be used to attack the Islamic State positions, but also against the government forces to further undermine the current regime of the Syrian government. Now, Moscow says that it supports the fact that the US has finally understood the scale of the conflict that has captured almost all of the Middle East region and says that no decision should be made without the permission of the Syrian authorities.
Thanks, Medina. That's RT's Medina Korchenova. Well, Syrian journalist and Mideast expert Ala Ibrahim joins us live now with more on the possible consequences of US strikes in Syria. Thanks very much for coming on to the programme. You live in Syria. How did the news go down about the planned US strikes?
Well, it depends on various parties of the conflict. For the Syrian government, the news did not go down very well because the Syrian government and its supporters across the country fear that an American intervention at this point would not only target the ISIS fighters, but also could target Syrian army posts and could help turn the course of the battles in the country. As the situation is right now, the Syrian army has an upper hand against the rebel factions, and an American intervention in favor of these rebels, even indirectly, could turn the tide against the Syrian army. On the other side, the Syrian opposition, mainly the opposition that resides abroad, the coalition of opposition powers, have voiced their approval of the Obama plan. They said they would approve of the plan. Obviously, Obama said that they will be sending more money, 25 additional million US dollars, to provide further equipment for what the Obama administration called moderate rebels, which is something that the coalition of opposition powers have been asking the West to do for some time now.
Sure.
But in general, there's a sense of tension in the Syrian capital.
And is there a fear, Mr. Ibrahim, is there a fear that this could escalate the crisis in the Middle East? Because Damascus says that any strikes without its permission would constitute an act of aggression. If that actually happened, what response would the Syrian government take, do you think?
That is a very big question that no one has an answer to. The Syrian foreign minister said on the 25th of August, earlier, just recently, he said that his government has aerial defense systems, and an incident could happen where an American drone or airplane is shot down by these aerial defense systems. It is unclear now and highly unlikely whether the Syrian government has the resources and the will to shoot down any American drones or warplanes at this point, or will the Syrian government sit back and watch as the Americans commit what the Syrian government has warned them against doing, which, as you said in your question, the Syrian government said any attack on Syrian territories without coordination with the Syrian government would be considered an act of aggression. But what can the Syrian government do? It doesn't seem that they can do a lot at this point.
Could they get help, though? Because there is a mutual defence agreement, isn't there, between Syria and Iran? That was signed, I think, back in 2006. So is there a danger that Iran could be dragged into this as well?
Well, this is another point of view that is discussed intensely here in Damascus. What would the allies of Syria do? What would the Russians do? What would the Iranians do? Why aren't they trying to formulate some kind of alliance of their own to strike the ISIS? These are very big questions. Iran has been a strong supporter of the Syrian government, but will they support the Syrian government enough, or take it to the last point where they will actually intervene militarily to help the Syrian government against an act of aggression, as the Syrian government calls it, from the Americans? I think it's also highly unlikely.
Well, a central plank, just moving on slightly to the US plan, is to arm moderate opposition in Syria. What's the likelihood of that working, do you think? Because there are fears, genuine fears, that it might actually arm those people who could defect then to ISIS.
Well, this is a very genuine fear. Let's bear in mind that President Obama himself said just 2 months ago, he said that the illusion of having a moderate opposition in Syria capable of defeating the Syrian army is highly unlikely. He called it an illusion. It shows you how the American administration has a very firm grip on the reality that the only people in Syria capable of fighting the Syrian army and making gains against the Syrian army are in fact the Islamist factions, mainly the ISIS and Nusra Front, which is the offshoot of Al-Qaeda in Syria, which is included in the American target list because it's an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, and Ahrar al-Sham, the movement of the free people of al-Sham. In general, this has happened before repeatedly. The gunman would go to the faction that has more money and has more funding and better organizational skills, and the Islamist factions, mainly the ISIS and Nusra Front, the offshoot of Al-Qaeda, they have this kind of qualities that make them able to attract the highest number of fighters.
OK, we do have to leave it there, but look, thanks very much for coming on to RT today. That was Ala Ibrahim, a Syrian journalist. Thank you.